Sir,
Yes, sir.
first you start the session, then we will talk later on.
Okay, sir. Uh,
First you start the session.
okay, sir. With your permission, sir, I request Akashdeep sir to start the session and means enrich us with the information and knowledge. Thank you, sir.
So I'd like to thank the team at EDC ISC GHRCM to present here. And without further ado, I will get started. So we keep asking funding and which funding is cheaper, which is riskier, whether or not debt is better. That is a primary concern we need to address when we want to secure the growth of the enterprise. People think that because you are obliged to pay back a debt, venture funding must be easy. However, there is something called as equity dilution. Whenever you raise money from a venture fund, you end up losing that much part of your ownership in the company. At the end, when you are about to get listed, it is often seen in American businesses and so many other small caps also that are now trying to, go at the venture capital route in the last few years compared to the Birlas, the large groups in our country, Tatas and all. There, the founders' equity gets significantly diluted. That is the impact of raising venture fund. Now let's get more into it. So this was a brief. I talked about debt versus equity. That is why if you know that your business is generating certain amount of cash and you are able to pay back the interest burden, then that is why a lot of promoters, instead of going for venture capital, would prefer to always have a serviceable debt in the books. It not only reduces your company's earnings because then you are not, having to, you can show that debt as an expense on your balance sheet while still retaining ownership. So who is the perfect person to be a founder? Somebody who has a acute sense of ownership, and I want to take ownership of this problem. I want to solve this problem, make the community better as a part of that solution, as benefits of that solution, and keep finding wider user groups who will take advantage of that solution. So that ownership itself gets diluted as you start taking more and more investors on your board, which is why there is always this dilemma of debt versus equity. And this is something each founding team has to take a very considerate approach in order to not end up not being the owners of their own business. This also I mentioned the controlling rights concern. And there is the downside to everything. So if you have debt and you keep piling debt and you see that your business is having some major fundamental uh, parameters have shifted because of which your earlier profitable business is not bringing enough profit and you still bring in more debt and more debt and more debt to keep doing the things that are not making you money, that is a short path to bankruptcy. So that is the other end of the spectrum. You have to be careful of putting where your, you have to only spend things that your customer is willing to pay for. And this is where a lot of Indian founders I have seen in so many business and FICCI and enclaves I meet, and there is a persistent complaint in a lot of Indian founders that they are having an increasing interest cost every quarter. That is where this interest cost problem comes from. So here's a small table that I have made, which is explaining the different kinds of funding and what are the different benefits in each of them and the downsides. One thing that is often overlooked because founders are busy solving a problem, their vision has to be focused. But as a corollary or as a side effect of that ultra focused vision, they don't have the time to understand which authorities are giving which grants and how to secure those grants. Grants are the better alternative to equity and debt, but an insufficient component. Grants given by governments, research institutions will always be a small component. So now, but there is actually no risk factor for the startup because no collateral is involved.
Yeah.
In the equity side, the risk is on the investor. Now, pressure for repayment is less in a venture capital because you are not actually supposed to have any mortgage. But because of the carelessness or carelessness of certain founders and raising from the wrong investors, you might end up with a shareholder agreement where there is an implicit there is an implicit clause for you to generate some internal rate of return, which is kind of like a pseudo debt. So you have to be very careful when you choose an investor because some investors will try to make sure that a small detail, small clause here and there, not the really reputed ones, the really reputed ones, the angel firms, the venture capital firms, they are not really going to play these games as much as some of the other more or less traditional investors who think of startup investing as a kind of pseudo debt. There is a huge amount of investors in India who would like to, give this kind of pseudo debt to startups. So you have to be very careful when taking venture capital also to not be in this trap of having equity dilution also and then having a
Debt also.
interest repayment clause also. You have to be careful when you write your signature on the shareholder agreement that these kind of things should not be there because you are either diluting or you are either taking a interest burden. That is actually the norm normally. Now, what is the investor looking for when he's taking risk, early stage risk? The earlier the investor comes, the higher the risk. That is why the angel investors tend to have a larger percentage wise stake in your company at the beginning, and the investors that follow on have lesser percentage wise stake, but the rupee value or the dollar value of that smaller percentage stake becomes higher because the subsequent investor is infusing higher amount of capital. That is how the valuation of the startup keeps growing exponentially. Now, debt financing you cannot expect, or the lender cannot expect to get exponential returns if you are ensuring that there are no such clauses. There are a lot of loan sharks who will give you debt which will compound on it and again compound on it and again compound on it. So this is another thing. Even if you think that you don't want to dilute your equity, that raising debt is possible, you have to be very careful about how the debt is being squared off, how the debt is being, the EMI and how the interest cost is actually coming out to be when you sign the agreement. Otherwise, even debt can start having an exponential compounding effect, which is again harmful for the company's survival. Now, for grants, they don't expect neither equity nor debt. They are there so that that particular technology comes out of nascency, reaches a kind of maturity, and it ends up becoming a successful business for society so that more jobs are created, that particular problem is solved, and so on and so forth. So the involvements in the decisions. Now there are investors themselves who will start having a very hands-on approach with the way the company is handled to some degree. Now this is something that every equity, every founder seeking to get funding for his company through investors in exchange for equity has to be very, very mindful of. And that is one of the reasons why there is a need for the founder to find investors who were from that domain. If you are a biotech founder and you understand biotech, but if you raise a funds from somebody who is not in biotech, who doesn't understand that it takes a long gestation period for biotech companies to convert their patents into marketable solutions, then there will be clash between the board. So in order to avoid those kind of clashes, it is strongly recommended always seek out investors who have had either prior investment exposure or who have actually been in that kind of a business. Like certain founders, they start a company, their company gets successful, goes to IPO, then their equity becomes very valuable, then they become angel investors so that they can otherwise, they can also go and benefit the ecosystem at large. So that is why the decision makers who come on board, you have to make sure that they are aligned with your vision. Now, in the case of debt, the investment is significantly less because there is no equity. If equity is not given, then investment that comes from raising the debt capital has very little rights. It has some convertibility rights that will look into further detail. And grant, as I said, there is no obligation to return, and there is no concern to give any rights. It is the most uh, founder centric fund. Now there are so many sources for all these funds. For equity, angel investors, family and friends, crowdfunding, incubators, venture capitalists, family offices. So all these great names of business houses in our country, that it is the Mahindras and the Tatas and the Birlas, they have their own family office, which is a dedicated unit of investment management professionals who will just look for nascent opportunities in different spaces. Debt financing, there is banks, then there are NBFCs, then there are government loan schemes, and of course there is SIDBI, and SIDBI will have so many other partners, Small Industrial Development Bank of India, and then the central government, state government, and there are all these corporate challenges that come out with grants to solicit the concerned and particular solutions and to nourish those particular solutions. One of these grants, because grants are the most friendly for the founder, I have decided to place this at the start of the whole presentation. This is a techno entrepreneur promotion program. It's mainly focused on innovation based technology. This is an initiative of our own government, Department of Science and Technology. The aim is to ensure that individual innovations can be transformed into successful enterprise. Now you can utilize this fund in various ways. There is a limitation to any grant, like I earlier said, 2 lakhs to 1 crore. Just because it is saying 1 crore doesn't mean everybody who applies gets 1 crore. It is a government grant. There are so many applicants for it. Even though I said that not all startup founders are aware of grants, but there is always in India for anything related to government so much of enthusiasm and so much of application. So you can always expect to have a smaller funding mostly. Now, what are the common uses of this fund? So, since it is one of those kind of things where you get the money based on the strength of the founding team and the business plan or the business model canvas, you don't necessarily need to have a large consumer base or a large user group or a repeated revenue. That is why, in the most earliest stage of your business, the grants are generally used. Conceptualization, fabrication of prototype, trial and error. These are the kind of places, kind of activities where the grants are commonly applied. The yellow lines are the website links where you can go and apply yourself. Now there are various schemes, and I said that it is nascent. It is particularly focused on certain domains. Currently, Agritech Launchpad is looking for agritech related solutions to improve upon. And you have to apply, then you will have to get mentoring. They will see whether, even if you don't have any revenues yet, they want to see whether you are doing everything, you're learning from the mistakes of the prior businesses, and you are not making a lot of repeated errors. So that is where all these places, all these grants tend to come with the incubation facility. If you go through all the requirements of the incubation facility, you are able to get the grant. All the requirements, all the product market fit related exercises, design thinking exercises, and you have to also keep showing that your product is improving, then you are able to get these grants. Some of these grants are the Prayas grant, the Biotech Innovation Grant, and so on. Then there is the multiplier grant scheme. This is under the Department of Electronics and Information Technology. Aim is here to improve the IT, analytics, enterprise software, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and technology hardware related startups. The scheme can go up to a maximum of 2 crores and it can offer this support for a duration of 2 years. Focus area, as the issuing department is electronics and IT, you have to make sure that your startup is actually, centered around these technologies. The scheme is extended up to 31st March 2020, and probably there is some significant discussion going on to have a variant of the scheme coming forward. But that is one of the things that entrepreneurs have to be mindful of. That these grants, they have a duration, and beyond the duration, the grants may or may not be available. So at the time of your application, you have to make a search of your own and see which grants are available. The Technology Development Council budget head will be used for the implementation of this grant. And you can go to the meity.gov.in website and further understand the nuances at the time of your applying of this grant. Now NASSCOM. NASSCOM is the industry body for software, and they are one of the most reputed places from where you can get any kind of startup support. If you get a startup kit support eligibility from NASSCOM, then a lot of other angel investors will start taking special note of you. It's a kit that is offering quite a bit of industry credit. So when you are having less resources, it's very important for you to get as much benefit, as much support from the overall community at large without you becoming you requiring to pay upfront. So that is why all these cloud providers like Amazon Web Services, Google, Microsoft have all these kinds of onboarding offers where they let you use their infrastructure for 8 months, 16 months to 2 years, depending on how you pitch to them and depending on how much credits you get. If your business is using $1,000 of credits and you got $24,000 of credits, then you can run it up to 2 years, so on and so forth. So in cloud, one of the reasons why venture capitalists are seeing whether you or not you are able to leverage the benefits of the cloud is you don't have to pay for the cost of a data center. Earlier in 2000 2005 range, every startup needed to spend so much money, tens and tens and lakhs of dollars, $1 million, $2 million, just upfront cost on setting up their own data center to serve their customers without knowing how many customers will show up. Now with the cloud, maybe your March month, not as many customers came, but in May, you get 10,000 customers more. Then you don't have to buy 10,000 servers more. What you can do is lease these virtual private servers from all these cloud providers. That is why the NASSCOM startup kit, although it sounds like a kit, but it is no less important than any other grant. These are all the various places from where you get support. You get you get support for your call management and for your billing and your all kinds of cloud benefits that I said, and so on. Unlimited India. Now, not every business is trying to make money on the red ocean or on the competitive landscape of corporate corporate India. Some businesses are trying to find out the neglected few, the socially necessary kind of innovations, the social impact kind of domains, and for that also there are incubators. Unlimited India is such an incubator. very early stage they will support entrepreneurs. They also support on government organizations and social centric enterprises. In fact, Unlimited India has their own e-commerce portal where their own businesses that are being incubated get the opportunity to sell their products. Kind of like a modernization of Khadi Gurudyog. Now you can, they make sure that the entrepreneurs and the particular social venture you're doing, they have some really customized mentoring for it, and their support can last up to 4 years. Here's a brief infographic from their own website, and this is their website link, so you can understand how it happens. That you have to get inducted, or whether you are eligible or not. Then they will see whether the milestones that you're setting are realizable or not. Then you need to take their coaching, because even if you are the Sachin Tendulkar of your domain, even then Tendulkar sir had to take a coach, because sometimes we are like this. We are too myopic. We are too focused on just a few handful of targets and milestones, and then we forget how the overall community at large is perceiving us. That is why you need somebody who is a neutral observer, who is going to tell you the straight facts for what they are, and have you course correct, so that your money that you are raising funds for doesn't go down into something irrelevant. How to do that? So you have to do that by doing site visits for your target community. Then you need to bring your different vendors, different talents, different interns and employees together, and you need to work with it. Networking can often involve you, your vendors, or your target customers, and then there is follow on funding. If you do all the other steps properly, then the likelihood of raising fund increases significantly. Now the thing is that if you want to be a successful businessman, you need to keep creating secondary leaders. You need to keep delegating. You need to encourage people to take up roles. And that is the kind of leadership that you need to learn. And this is something that they are doing leadership workshop. And finally, they do their own impact measurement. So overall, it's a great place to get mentoring and benefits for the social sectors targeting startups. Like this is a grant from Ryerson University, Canada, and these kind of grants also keep coming up. So if you are a startup that is particularly working in this kind of cervical cancer area or not, then this is not really a permanent kind of thing. These kind of grants can keep varying. Now this Ryerson University grant, I'm just taking as an example. Don't be fixated on the university. You have to keep looking for which other universities are looking for collaboration in India. So the human papilloma virus is the primary cause of cervical cancer, and the Daphne Cockwell School of Nursing will test a new strategy under their fund for innovation and transformation up to $250,000. Okay, moving
Yes.
forward.
Sir, is there such grants from Indian universities?
Sir, for Indian universities, the grants actually are more or less, targeted to their particular department.
Okay.
And unless you are the promoting team, the founder team is incubating, for example, in Sign,
Okay.
then there are some grants they might be able to access. But Sign ka prerequisite is you need to be associated to IIT Bombay in some way, one of your founders.
Okay.
Similarly, IIT Kharagpur also has their own incubation cells. So you have to see whether the
So we require one person at least from IIT to get grants from Indian
Usually
university.
it is like that. Otherwise, also if you are from industry with reputed, core technology knowledge,
Okay.
even if you didn't have a person from there, somebody might join in. The professors who are handling the entrepreneurship cell might say that, see, this in these persons, these students, they are looking to do sweat equity. They want to work for you. You don't have to pay salary, but you give a small equity. Then
Okay.
also it might be enough to get qualified. It's all down to, in the startup space, everything is very fragile, very up to negotiation. You have to win the people's heart with your
Communication and
deliverables, with your promise. Yes. And then the more people back your vision, the more your vision becomes real, then even more people you can find to back your vision. That is the essence of startup funding in a single line.
thank you.
Yeah. And now the government is also keeping a lot of emphasis on startups. That is why some taxation, there will be some incentives like under the Startup India program, 3-year tax holiday in a block of 7 years, so that you can take that profits and you can reinvest it into the growth of your business. Under Section 80 IAC, after 2016 April, you can get up to 100% tax rebates on profits or for maximum period of 3 years in a block of 10 years. So this is important when you are going to raise funds. If your profit after tax due to this 80 IAC section remains high, then your startup suddenly becomes more important or more appealing to in that year to the angel investment groups or venture capitals and so on and so forth. But everything, of course, is within some limits. Government is not going to give you infinite checkbook of take tax exemption. So that the limit is at rupees 100 crores, and only private limited companies and LLPs are eligible for this exemption, because the whole emphasis is on creating employment. So that's the point. And you have to be DPIIT recognized startup to get this. Then there are some incentives on long-term capital gains. So to make things easier, the Section 54 EE enables exemption from in part of the fund that the central government is notified of within a period of 6 months from the date of the actual transfer of the asset. So this kind of LTCG gains are applicable to some of the angel investors or venture capitalists which have got their proper AIF approval and are also notifying the central government properly. Additionally, this rule limits the LTCG benefits up to the 50 lakh rupee band. So this amount has to be invested in the fund for 3 years, and the investor ends up withdrawing the amount before 3 years are up. Then the amount becomes taxable. So the government is also very smart. The
Yeah.
government is looking at making sure that the startup is able to retain the funds it has raised. Otherwise, what happens in America, you will see that in Silicon Valley and all, within 8 to 12 months, so many investors are coming and going, coming and going, coming and going, because everybody is worried about their investment. The only way the investor will get, the fear of the investment out is when the investment is paid to some other investor at a much higher premium. So the Indian government doesn't want so much, crowding and so much volatility on the investment board. So it has put a 3-year limitation. Similarly, if you think of the debt funds, there also government has this 3-year notion. Only the government knows why 3 is the important number, not 2, not 4. Nobody can decide that. But there is it is, so let us be aware of it. Further information you can find out from this article. Now there are some intellectual property incentives also. So you see, patent applications generally used to take 5 to 7 years. What is a patent? For those of you who are hearing it for the first time, a patent is your exclusive right for commercializing your invention, granted to you for a maximum of 20 years. But you need to apply and then you need to wait for the grant. This period only can go from 5 to 7 years of the 20-year total lifetime of your patent. So then the question was, if I'm not, in the 5 to 7 years, if somebody copies my invention, then what? So there the government will say, or the court will support you as long as you are able to go through a long and lengthy litigation and prove that you were the original inventor of the thing and the other party is the copycat. Then anybody who copied between that 5 to 7 year period when your patent was still under review and had not been granted will be required to compensate you for damages. But that was earlier. Now the government is seeing that if we remain so slow in granting patents, not all startups will have money to litigate. So then overall venture capitalists will also start having a depreciated view of Indian intellectual property. The Indian patents itself will get less registration. So let us do something. Let us give a expedited grant to these startups. So that is why this has become a benefit for the new startups. So the Comptroller General of Patents, Designs and Trademarks is the authority who will make sure or who will grant you your patent. And you have to go through a panel of facilitators so that you file the properly the patent. Patent is an exclusive right. So you cannot really ask for a wide right. Every patent has to be selective, relevant, and somewhat core to your business only. You cannot take a patent on the overall. You cannot take a patent on laptop. You can take a patent on particular new mechanism of a keyboard or particular new webcam or particular new some other technology that you have made that makes that laptop superior. But on the whole thing, no patent will be granted. Similar things you will have to understand from a panel of facilitators. You will soon as we go ahead you will realize the importance of this patent and why it is important and how investors will see whether you have some kind of patents or not. And facilitators are responsible for making sure that information and other accuracy is proper or not. And the point of a patent is that it is geographically restricted. So Indian patent only India will recognize. So anybody can copy in Japan or Korea. But if they copy in Japan and Korea, but if you go to Japan, expand your business there, go to USA, expand your business there, and apply for a patent in America, then anybody who copied it is the same thing. Because your patent was granted first in any jurisdiction in the world. From that day, if it is copied anywhere else, you go to that other jurisdiction and get your patent, then all those copycats will have to pay you and compensate you. And these compensations can be in very large amounts. So the government also is planning to bear the cost to some exceptional businesses, so that if you can show that there will be a foreign exchange surplus because of your patent, then the government is willing to back you up in various ways. Now the rebates are provided as an 80% rebate. Vis-a-vis, there are some other you have to make sure that all the proper channel and everything is done, which your patent facilitator will further advise you, because these are all nuances of the patenting world. And there was a session on patents that sir has covered, so I'm sure everybody is understanding that now better.
Yeah.
So why bring up this slide? Because we all keep thinking that whether debt better, equity better, or whether grant is too little in amount. So then if all three funding options are problem, which funding option is the best one? The best one, I tell you, is the customers fund. It is the number one fund that any startup will look for. They will look for subscriptions. So you will have to make sure that there is a recurring subscription revenue. Then only, will you become suddenly a prominent investment option. Subscription revenue means people keep paying you again and again. So ever since Jio has come, people are paying Reliance again and again. Even though petrol has become so high, even though number of people taking petrol has come down. Earlier, who was giving a revenue, subscription revenue kind of to them through their petrol and other some petroleum products? The refinery part was making Reliance Industries richer. Now the emphasis is gradually shifting towards Jio. But in Apple's case, who is giving subscription revenue? It is the Apple Store. Every app you buy on the iOS platform, 30% of the revenues are shared with Apple. In the case of Amazon, there is Amazon Prime. In India, we are paying only 1,000 rupees or something per annum. But in America, it is $13 to $15 per month. So that is a recurring revenue. And under that, Amazon is giving you some videos and some audios also. Then what is Facebook's recurring revenue? Well, we think Facebook is free, but people who are marketing on Facebook, all these Unilever and all these big corporations, they are continuously month on month spending some money on advertising on Facebook. So that is subscription revenue for Facebook, and that is the best revenue in the world, best source of funding for any startup. So there are various kinds of debt available for export-centric startups. So there is rupee export credit, rupee deemed export credit, foreign currency export credit. There is two components to it. There is packaging, there is pre-shipment. Then after the shipment has happened, you need to again give some line of credit to your user in that country who will take your goods and then sell it, and then he will give you back the funds. So this is post-shipment credit, so on and so forth. So there are these various kinds of heads under the debt category. Please excuse me. Overdraft means you have a account and then you borrow beyond the limits of that account. Cash credits, bill of finance, hire purchase finance. So bill finance, hire purchase finance, these are usually required to, you need to show the financing body that your bill of you have given a bill to somebody, and that bill, it's a kind of bill discounting. So you will get lending on the 80 to 60% of the receivables that you are supposed to get from some large corporation which has a track record of clearing bills. If you give a bill to the local startups and say that, look, I need funding because of that, then the probability of getting financing for that is very low. Non-fund based facilities, letter of credit, standby letter of credit, bank guarantee. So letter of credits are harder to get nowadays. Earlier it was not that hard, so people started to abuse it, and a certain jewelry maker particularly found a loophole, and it is even much more harder to get letter of credit from Punjab National Bank particularly. So don't try to approach them. It is not the right climate to get letter of credit from them. But this is a kind of guarantee the bank in India will give to some bank in abroad, so that you can take the dollar or other foreign currency from that foreign bank, and then when your bills are cleared, then your Indian bank, actually the Indian bank is not even supposed to be in the picture, but somehow the creative people at Gitanjali Gems managed to make the PNB fellows, a conservative bank, pay the foreign entity. They were borrowing abroad and they were making PNB pay. That is really magic. Anyway, letter of credit is supposed to help you to clear the foreign entity. Suppose you have a business in America, you have a Bank of America account, and Bank of America is paying salaries for your American business unit. Then looking at the letter of credit in India, Bank of America might increase the loan that you can take from there. When used cleverly, these letter of credits can save you in a foreign currency depreciation to a significant extent. So what are the major cities where you can get funding? So you can get funding, as you can see, most of the incubators, angel investors, venture capitalists, they are scattered around around Pune, Chennai, Hyderabad, Jaipur, Kolkata, Kochi, and all these other cities, and Mumbai also. But these are the some of the cities where you will get quite a bit of startup angel incubation facilities. So incubation facility is a place where you can rent offices for a exchange for your equity, and you can also find seasoned entrepreneurs who will come there frequently, who will share their mistakes in their businesses so that you don't repeat those businesses. So that is the kind of networking opportunity that these startup hubs are providing. So some overview of 2019 status. So 8,900 to 9,300 startups were incorporated, incepted, and the overall base has been growing 12 to 15% year on year. Of that, the startups added in 2019 1300 plus, and they were steady and sustained growth. Unicorn is a startup which is having exceeded $1 billion valuation. 1 million is 7.5 crores, and $1 billion is above 7,500 crores valuation. So that is a unicorn. There are seven such unicorns in 2019. And so the funding that actually was given out to startups is $4.4 billion. 18% is all into deep tech. Deep tech means artificial intelligence, neural networks, cloud computing, Internet of Things, blockchain. These are the hot new technology areas which are exponentially growing. So that is why you see this 40% compound annual growth rate since 2014. And active institutional investors have also risen to 390 plus. Then more than 335 plus active incubators and accelerators from 320 in 2018. Then over 60,000 direct jobs were created, and indirect jobs are 1.3 to 1.8 lakhs. So rounds of fundraising. You start your business, so you have to put your own funds. If you don't put your own funds, nobody else will trust your business. So that is the number one thing people see, how much you have put your own skin in the game. Then comes the people who put the seed capital. These could be your friends, family, and even some early stage angels, angel investors. Then venture fund. Venture fund can be in various series: Series A, Series B, Series C. Some companies need not need Series C, so they might actually do IPO. But before IPO, you need to find a investment banker. These are private equity firms. They will do your IPO for you, but also invest with you so that your price is at a set band. And then it is the initial public offering usually. So startup funding levels. So the self funding, as I said, you have to figure out your own finances from where you will you know so that is why a lot of company founders start their company while they are in their first job. They are in a current job and they start their company and they work on their company in the night and in the weekends, because that you initial runway is generally from the founder only. Some degree of skin in the game from the founder only. Friends and family are always important to ask, but then you have to make sure that you only take that much which those friends and families can live without for 7 to 10 years. We don't know how long it will take for the business to become fully profitable. So you have to make sure there is a proper communication between them. They don't expect that you can suddenly return the money in 6 months, because that may not be the case. So that is one thing you need to be upfront about when raising money from friends and family. We think that this self funding is very limited. Companies cannot grow to a high level without it. But actually, if your company generates enough uh, free cash flow and enough new customers are added, that is, the overall revenue base also increases, then you actually can, through self funding, only grow to a large extent. So, Haldiram is a huge company, and most of its funding is from the family itself. So, the thing is, we will say that, oh, Haldiram is a big business family. How can we do it? Not all are from business families. I'll tell you, the Zerodha broking app has exceeded $1 billion valuation, and it is one of the examples in our country of self-funding. They did not raise institutional money, venture money, angel money. From the growth of the business itself, they have been continuously expanding, and now they are 1 billion plus valuation, the largest broker in the country, which doesn't have offices outside Bangalore. Everybody will go to them and wait whatever long it takes on the phone if necessary. But everybody is now going to all these kind of brokers. So it is actually possible to do self-funding and make a very big business also. But still, in some genres like biotech and really investment-heavy industries, that may not be the case. Initial business may not turn profitable right away. then you need an external funding source. So you have to find people who will back your minimum viable product when it is being made. At the very early stage, you don't have a fully fledged car or fully fledged prototype. Same, so many problems will be there in your offering. Even then, somebody has to back you. So you need to find that kind of a person who has trust in your vision, so that all the flaws in your prototype should not be a cause of contention and disharmony and lawsuits between you and your angel investor. Product market fit is being tuned at the angel level. Venture funding, private equity. So when your product market fit has started happening and your first prototype is attracting customers, or customers are willing to, buy even a product which is flawed, but it is doing something so well, there is no other alternative. So then you will start, having some revenue growth, some traction. That is where venture capitalists start coming in. So profitability could be high, could be low, because Flipkart was not profitable for a long time. Amazon was not profitable for a long time. For over 10 years plus, Amazon has been making losses, and I think Flipkart is also at a similar thing. So it's like this: businesses that make a loss will be tolerated as long as they increase revenue, as long as they increase user base, as long as the loss is strategic enough. Because earlier, what was the case? These 3-year angel, I gave that example of long-term capital gains exemption and all was not there 5-10 years back. So businesses were more looking to save on taxes by putting money in the business's growth somehow. You could spend money on R&D instead of spending money on, or giving out a big chunk of your business as taxes. Why not just spend it on R&D? Because anyway, if you don't do R&D, your competitors will come in that space, and you will not be able to continue growing your thriving your business. So you might as well take a R&D hit on your profitability. So these kind of tactical uses of losses are tolerated by the venture funding community, or maybe even encouraged depending on whom you are getting venture funding from. So the Series A is the first level, Series B comes after. So Series A is very targeted. You cannot spend too much on ads. You have to mostly make sure that there is incentives to your user to talk to another person. Make your user your advertisement agent. So you see, earlier when Ola started, when Uber also came, they were giving out ride credits in large number to a lot of people. Almost anybody who was getting the app was getting some more money to encourage it to somebody else, so that their next ride will be cheaper. That is one of the uses of Series A. In Series B, you start expanding the fleet of cars or do more capital heavy goods to justify the rate of growth. So if you've shown a 20% rate of growth, what does it mean? It means that in a very short time, the selected target geography is going to be saturated. So if you want the initial investor to get the 10 times exit for 5 crore investment, 50 crore exit, it's not possible in that one geography. So then you and the first level investor, whether it is an angel fund or it is a Series A fund, will start looking for a Series B, so that you can expand from your first geography to the next geography. That is one of the uses of Series B. Series B you could also use to hire important, talents for your business. So some of the talents could be in the form of core problem solving talent, like a PhD from Harvard or Stanford, or it could even be a celebrity. So we see so many ads in Big Basket and Byju's by celebrities. So these are all some of the things possible because of venture funding, Series B level or Series C, depending on your business's needs. Private equity generally comes in the picture when it is sensing that your business has a sustained track record. And any business that is requiring IPO or planning to have an IPO exit needs to show 5 years of profitable business to SEBI. So, this is a very mature stage of the business. And pre-IPO funds, private equity funds, there are some category 3 alternate investment funds. And in these investment funds, the investors who come on board only start from 1 crore. So the fund is similar to a mutual fund, but much different in the case that They, instead of mutual fund which is restricted to Nifty and other NSE, BSE listed companies, these AIFs can list in unlisted companies also. So that 1 crore I'm talking about, the person who is coming to AIF, you and I go to an AIF, we need to give AIF 1 crore. Then 1 crore will be used by the AIF either in the private equity AIF or in the venture capital AIF. It will be divided into 10 checks. These 10 checks will go to 10 different startups, and you and I, we will become shareholders of the startup before IPO. Then after IPO it goes, then we get a much higher return than the people who are buying after listing. That is the one of the ways of generating revenue in the startup space. Series C or the IPO is, it's like a final stage, you know. If you are sure that you don't want to further grow from India to Dubai or India to America or India to another geography, so that is when you go for IPO or something like that. Because then, as I said, the cost of equity is the ownership of your company. So at Series C, you become a much smaller owner of your company, even if you founded it, even if you spent hours on it, hours, weeks, months, it becomes a very small portion of the overall capitalization table. So you have to keep agreeing, and you have to keep your venture capitalist or all the other shareholders very happy. Otherwise, they can remove you from the controlling position. This happened to big people also, like Steve Jobs. He was removed from the board because his business was not, turning profitable in 1990s and all. So after leaving Apple, Steve Jobs went and found a company, an animation company, and then he took over that animation company and he renamed it and it became Pixar. And after the launch of successful films like Toy Story and all, he had enough money, so he saw that Apple was continuously coming down, and so he went back to Apple then. So this can happen if you start your company and if you don't become aware of how much your equity is getting diluted in each level, you could end up like Steve Jobs in 1990s. How venture capital firms and angels are approved under SEBI. So I'm keep mentioning this AIF and category 3 and all. So what is that? So category 1 and 2, there are some requirements. You match it, then you come under this category. So what are the requirements? Minimum 3 years, and it has to be a closed ended fund. Okay. And the tenure may be extended for a further period of 2 years with approval of two-thirds of the unit holders by value of their investment. And what is category 2? There is no minimum tenure preside, necessary. It could be open or closed ended. It's more flexible in that sense. Tenure also may be changing. So basically, it's down to the managers of the fund. If the managers are thinking of closing the fund down, then they'll go for category 1 and 3. But you might ask me that why would they think of closing the fund down? Because it is a startup investment. It's not a mid cap or large cap equity investment. So what happens is, if the number of startups that particular fund was targeting, like biotech startups, if it has seen that in this, India market, in India geography, my interest area, my, selected niche of biotech startups is saturated, I don't want to raise more money. Then it's possible and it's entirely normal. I might go and shift from biotech to agri-tech. Then I might need a new fund. So that is why there are these two main categories. And this is one of the more technicalities of how this fund is run. AIF shall liquidate within 1 year unless, there is a consent from the unit holders following the expiration tenure. This is for category 1 and 3. So early life cycle. Now this is from Professor Ashwath Damodaran in New York University. This is the person who has made this report, and you can read it further in this link. So what happens is, everybody thinks that, oh, startup will have huge exponential revenue, but people often forget that everything is an idea, and when everything begins at the idea stage, how can there be revenue? There's more or less just losses. You are spending your time, your energy, your effort. So those are a kind of operating losses. So the company is actually going under zero. Yeah, earnings are going negative. Even if you start your startup as a side business, you cannot keep your startup as a side business and expect it to become recognized by venture capitals and angel investors and get funding. You have to, close your main job at some point and be fully committed to the startup. So that's the point where earnings are going negative, and this is where a lot of people lose hope, don't feel like continuing, and give up. But the companies that don't give up, what was observed by Professor Damodaran is that they start having a uptick in their revenue. So there will be a time where revenue is increasing and losses are also increasing because you're trying to acquire customers. Recall the earlier days of Flipkart. For every big billion day, Flipkart was racking huge losses, but it was also increasing its revenue. So that is why you see this divergence. At some point, however, you need to start making sure that the revenue start translating to earnings. Instead of continuously diverging, it starts converging at some point. This started happening for Amazon from 2006 onwards when Amazon Jeff Bezos gave an ultimatum to his own employees. I want every single IT resource that we have exposed to the externally through service oriented architecture, and that was the birth of Amazon Web Services, which in turn made Amazon super profitable. So as of now, Flipkart is not just a e-commerce store anymore. It is a IT business with a huge infrastructure of its own. But they have not decided to compete with all these cloud providers yet. We might see that happen. We might see it happen at a much later stage. We don't know that. But that's the thing. If you keep expanding city to city, as in the case of Amazon, it was expanding in so many cities. It needed so many computer servers to keep track of so many orders and employees in different cities, and so gradually Amazon had a huge infrastructure, and that infrastructure was being underutilized because the maximum load is in Christmas time, and the remaining 11 months you still have so much infrastructure. So then Jeff Bezos in 2006 decided, I will rent out my service surplus infrastructure. So for that I need to convert the infrastructure into service oriented architecture, and that is when the dead infrastructure or the dead investment or the sunk cost suddenly started creating more and more earnings also. So then the curve started to converge. Earnings were increasing and revenues were also increasing. Both are increasing for Amazon. So then this is the second stage where you see growing revenues and everything starts moving towards profitability. Equity value at the end of the forecast horizon divided by 1 plus target rate of return raised to n. This is the normal equity value for today. Proportion of equity to new capital provider is you can get that by dividing new capital provided divided by post money valuation. One more further you can understand through this simple example. So you might go and ask a venture capital for some money. You might ask X money. Venture capital is actually not thinking of that. Venture capital is thinking, I have raised $100 million. I have to give back $500 million to my investors. Because see, in an example of AIF, I told you na, you and me can go to an AIF and invest money. Our money will go to startups. So you and me are investing 1 crore. We will expect some higher returns than Nifty. We are taking so much risk. It's the same thing. Venture capital will raise money from somebody. Then venture capital has to return money at a higher than Nifty rate. If Nifty is giving 10 to 11%, venture capital has to give 20 to 30%. Generally, it is 25 to 30% range mostly. So then the venture capital firm is bothered about the huge exit, $100 million exit. And he is thinking that what kind of a return on investment can give me that $100. So if the 20 times return on investment will give me $100 exit, then it means that I need to think of a valuation after investment of $5 million. So then if I am going to have a $5 million investment, how much am I actually thinking of investing? Let's say I want to invest just $1 million. I'm saying just, but that is also huge money. 7.5 crore rupees is $1 million roughly. So that much I'm thinking of investing in one business. So then what does it mean? It means that the pre-money valuation is $4 million. See, I am telling you this is completely arbitrary. That venture fund will have a one valuation. If you are able to get that term sheet, And if you are able to approach another investor with that term sheet and show that, see, this is the prior term sheet, you can even manage to bargain a higher valuation. These things have happened in the past, which is why venture capital firms have become smart. If you get a term sheet from one person, one fund, then they will put a confidentiality clause. So if you show that term sheet to another venture capitalist, and if he sees that you have breached the confidentiality clause, he may not entertain you and invest in you. In the other way, he might tell that earlier venture capitalist firm that he has breached confidentiality. So that's actually something you need to be very careful of. If you breach confidentiality clauses with your venture capital firm before raising money, then they may not give you money at all. So this whole thing is super arbitrary. It is like one firm will think of, okay, I will invest $1 million. One firm will say, okay, I will invest $2 million. So then the pre-money valuation before adjusting for dilution will keep changing. This amount could be 3 million. This amount could be 5 million. Depends on how much the venture capital decided to invest in you. Thinking of the post money. And some kind of dilution of shares is happening. Na? He is not giving $1 million or 7.5 crores for free. I always keep telling you, dilution is the biggest risk, biggest threat for a founding team. So what is that dilution here? In this example, it is 30%. People have given less money for more equity, and in that case, your captable, your position in the captable keeps shrinking. Then new investors will be scared to come. Okay. So you have to make sure that you get the most amount of money for the least amount of dilution, and that is your number one rule as a founder. So in this case, he's taking 30% dilution. Generally in India, for every crore, there is a expected 5 to 10% dilution. 5 rarely happens. Mostly it is 10% or more dilution for every crore, roughly, in the angel investing stage. It is not a rule. It can be more or less depending on the venture capital firm's trust on you, your vision, and your current business profile. Here is an example of this company, Funding Circle. So it is basically a company that has been operating in the UK for a while now, since a few years. So in 2010 they raised an angel round for $1 million, and the next year they were able to raise another round, Series A, for $4 million. But that time the valuation had gone up. So this is the same thing. More the venture capitalists come in, the more they keep increasing the valuation, because they will think of an exit figure, and they will think of a return on investment figure, and then they'll divide the exit figure, return on investment figure, and they will reach at some kind of a valuation number. So if the next person, even though actual money invested is 4 million, the valuation is 15 million. Uh, Next person, Series B, from Ribbit Capital. This company had raised 16 million. Actual money invested was 22 million so far cumulative. Now actual money is actually less than 22 million, but this is something they have generated revenue also using that earlier money. So you see, if you want to raise the next round of funding, it cannot just be the money that the founder has raised from other venture capitalists in the books. You have to show that that money has somehow grown. That money has grown by acquiring new customers, new revenues. That is why, instead of just 5 million, this is now 22 million, because they had added 1 million. Otherwise it would be what, if you raise 16 million plus 5 is 21, but that 1 million extra is there, na? So you have to always show that you are growing. If you don't show you are growing, then you will not be able to garner interest from the community. Then we see here the next round was 37 million, and they didn't have a rise in valuation in that round, but they had a new investor. Then the next round they raised is 65 million. That time their valuation was improved to $209 million. And then in 2015 they raised 150 million, and then they were able to reach the $1.1 billion mark. Actual monies in the business at that time were 274 million. And then finally they had to raise a Series F also. So at Series F, I cannot imagine how little the founding team had controlling rights in the company. Very small percentage anymore. And then then it remained at 1.1 billion, or there was a plateau in the growth of the company. So they needed this new fund of Series F. So that is one example of funding. Now, nobody will fund you if you are not clear about whom you are planning to market, which market you are planning to satisfy. Tell me. So these are not people's name, these are the commonly used lingo acronyms in the investing world. Total available market, sometimes it's called addressable market, then serviceable market, and serviceable obtainable market. So, you know, the total number of LEDs that are sold in the world is a huge market, but you cannot sell to the whole world as a startup. You just don't have the necessary supply chain. So the investor will always ask, of the total, what can you service? So then you can service, let's say, the LED market which is having living colors. Okay. And after of that serviceable living colors LED market, what will be your focus? This has to be very centered around the trends, the countries, the competition, demand forecast. How do you understand the Asia market better, or do you understand the Europe market better? Because Europe market you will make much more sales in Christmas. Asia market, in particular in India, you will make much more sales in Diwali. So depending on different markets, you have to show that why you are the right person for this and whether you can access that market and make a revenue. So that is why serviceable obtainable market is much lesser in size. My realistic goal to sell living color into the LED market, probably. Okay. Another example is coming up of this, and why the whole world is looking to invest in India. That you'll understand through the example of this TAM itself. In India, our TAM is only increasing. Total addressable market or target addressable market only is increasing in India. Why? Because people are getting more access to funding, because everybody is lending money on a cheaper rate. So there is a phenomena called quantitative easing happening all over the world. Reserve banks, central banks are giving money to businesses to create more jobs. And a part of that is coming to India. And a part of that looks like this. In India, the categories of income earners. So in America and all these places, when they say per capita income, then it starts at the lower end on $30,000, goes on the higher end to millions and billions of dollars, and so on. So every country there is always a wide gap in the income that is always there. But let's see how these figures look for India. In 2005, roughly 4.5% were above $15,000 across household income. HH is household, and about 50% was in the under $15,000 range, and 44% was below $2,300 range in 2005. 2016, the figures earning who 15,000 beyond $15,000 in India has reached 8%, and 60% are now in the 2,300 to $15,000, and 82% in $2,300 under $2,300. And it is estimated that we will have about 16% people in the $15,000 plus range. So that is what attracts the large funds. The purchasing power is increasing, the penetration of internet is increasing. Two different things, when they converge, it becomes more attractive to the foreign investors. A lot of venture funds in India are basically the investing arms of their foreign parents, like Sequoia Capital and so many other companies, Tiger Global. Okay. So if we are having so much fundraising happening in India, what is happening with these funds? For example, this is the point of sale startup company Pine Labs. So whenever you do a credit card payment, you swipe it, then the swiping machine. Pine Labs is one of the startups in that space. Started in 1998, headquartered in Noida. They raised $227 million. Sector is fintech. In 2009, they went into mainstream payment space to provide these swiping solutions to the merchants. And in 17, the company entered Malaysia with an exclusive partnership with a bank, CIMB Bank. And subsequently, they have also raised money from PayPal, Temasek, and it is in talks with other international banks to expand its operations abroad. Similarly, Practo, the startup which is creating health tech online. Online, you get consultancy from your medical doctors. 2013, Practo opened in Singapore. Through the Singapore market, they were able
हॅलो
to access $19 million
सर
from
हां बोला
Tencent, Sequoia, all the other
चिराग
companies.
बँकमधून बोलतोय
And
का
in
आपण तिथं
2015, they went to
हां
Indonesia and Philippines. So
सर
Indonesia
पर्सनल
stock
शॉपवर आली
market
आहे
is
नाही
very
नाही नाही
rapidly
सर
developing.
नकोय
Same
काही
with Germany stock.
आता नको
Indonesia is a
काही
very rapidly
ठीक आहे सर काय
developing.
रिक्वायरमेंट असेल तर फोन
हां
करा.
नक्की फोन करतो सर
2016, Practo launched in Brazil. So with $55 million in Series D. So see, the more the funding you need to, the more you want to access a geography, the more you need to raise fund. It's like that. So they are going to Brazil, so they need Series D, along with so many other names. So Tencent, RuNet, RSI Fund, Thrive Capital. These are the VCs that have funded to target the Brazilian market and have an international footprint. Paytm, we all know this. We all use this now. After the pandemic, more and more people, more and more shops have been using Paytm, and it is a unicorn. Started in 2010, headquartered in Noida. They raised 2.8 billion so far. It is fintech related. So in 2015, they raised 472 million from Alibaba, the Jack Ma company, the founder who recently went missing but was again rediscovered. Then from Paytm, it started to move out to Canada. Paytm Canada was started in 2017. Then they raised $1.4 billion from SoftBank. Masayoshi Son is the lead in SoftBank, who has made a lot of high profile investments in India. So Paytm launched PayPay in Japan in joint venture with SoftBank and Yahoo Japan. So Goki is a subscription revenue based app which is using IoT to measure your vitals, and it is connecting you with trainers so that you're getting proof evidence of your health improving. So this is evidence based health improvement or science based health improvement, and this is a very emerging space now in health tech. So 2014 headquartered in Mumbai, raised $50 million. 2015 they raised $13.4 million, and not and they started its growth in United States and China. In December 2016, Goki, in partnership with Amazon, did programs that made it go to UK, USA, and Canada. And it is working with Mitsui and other active investors to create a second large entity. So, why I am telling you all this? One thing is you have to have a global vision, and you need to show your Series A that look, if you invest in me, then there's a high probability of us following the footsteps of these unicorns and having a large global access in some way or the other. If your Series A is not sure that another Series B will come, then you'll not get Series A. So that is the way the funding industry works. For each investor to come on board, you need to show that you have what it takes to take the company to a larger market. If that market is not global, it's okay. But at least it should not be restricted to Jalandhar. If your business cannot grow out of Jalandhar or out of Nagpur and it will remain in that city for the rest of its life, it is highly unlikely it will attract venture capital. So that is one of the reasons why you need to have this kind of your own growth trajectory. It may not be realizable, or you may not have proof, but you need to have a concept in place. You need to have a milestone in place. You need to have that kind of growth mindset in place. That is what makes sure that you become appealing to an investor. What is the total food market in India? As of 2017 only, it was more than 43,000 crores. But I don't have the recent figures, and I don't think in 2020 that much surveying work happened in terms of market surveys and all. What with all the lockdown going on, So, but you can assume it is still more than 43,000 crores. What is the 2017 number? So, why will we are taking this example to understand what's your niche? So, there can be so many kinds of food providers in the industry. There is organized, there is unorganized. You can get dosa for 100 rupees in a mall, and you can get dosa for 20 rupees on the footpath. Unorganized is all the footpath and all the, without getting all the government regulations clear. There are so many food vendors happening, and it's okay. They are getting some regulation, not all. That's okay. It's people who are taking a risk and eating, and still it's okay. So the organized sector is where you will get venture funding. You cannot get venture funding without getting all the regulations cleared. So we are looking at organized sector. Then what are the options in organized sector? Bars and lounges. Now there is actually some interest in Indian breweries. So if you have a bar lounge, and if you have a field also where you can grow the plants that you can convert into alcohol, like grapes and potatoes and all that, and then you might even find a venture capitalist interested in that. So all kinds of niches are happening in the organized food space. Quick service restaurants. So there are some quick service restaurant successes like Wow Momo. So Wow Momo first tried to raise funding at 4 crore when it had businesses, some success, and that's it. It was looking like a Momo shop only. The QSR element was not that battle proven. So see, only Momo shop also sells hundreds of momos in a month. As a QSR, what can you do to exceed that hundreds of momos a month and create a loyal following so that your momo eaters will not go to the cheaper momo eater? It's a difficult question to solve, na. But these Wow Momo people, they did it. From 4 crores, they went to 40 crores on their own, through their own expansion of the business, because the business was generating enough free cash flow, which was again reinvested. And of course, they were not buying real estate everywhere. That's not necessary to make Momo. You don't need to own a property to make Momo. You need to lease a property where footfall is happening, where people of a certain class and a certain hygiene are going to expect and want to eat without worrying about dead cockroaches in the food or in the vicinity and all that. And the importance of hygiene has shot up after the last year. So, but even before that, in 2016 and something, Wamomo had made that increase, and after that, it secured lots of funding then. And it grew from 40 crore to 350 crores in a matter of 2 to 3 years in valuation terms. So remember, I told you 100 crore valuation doesn't mean that the company is 100 crores. It may have much lesser money also, but it means that the impact is of 100 crores, or impact is of 350 crores, or the possibility of new investors coming in, they will have to value it at 350 crores because of all the back end integration, because of all the best practices that no other company is able to replicate, you know, because of the loyal following that you have created as a company. There are so many intangibles to a brand which we cannot justify just with math or science. That also becomes a part of valuation. So QSR space is very hot in India, and the high growth due to hygiene, scalability, standard operating procedures interest people. Kiosk and cart and all these places, they all are having full dining. They all have eat-in or takeaway or delivery. So you need to identify your niche, because each niche requires different kind of integration. If you want to do Momo, you need to be integrated backwards with your vegetable providers. And if you want to do a pub or a lounge backend personal brewery, then you need to be integrated with a farm which will offer you potatoes or grapes or whatever. So you need to know your niche. The overall unorganized market is still much larger than the organized market. Barely the organized market is about 3,000 crores out of the over, and more than 34,000 crores is about the unorganized market. But the growth of an organized market, if done properly using QSR strategies, is much higher. See, What is the difference again? I told you. On the street, one dosa maker, he sells hundreds of dosas, hundreds of momos in a month, but he cannot, sustain the thing. If he stops selling, then his business is done. It is not exactly a business, it is a self-employment. Whereas a venture capitalist is looking to invest in a business. If one momo shop, one staff leaves, then another should come and join. That is the thing. People are willing to do graduation and go and work in a momo shop if it is wow momo, because they see the future growth as a business manager, store manager, future salary growth. But the same thing, if you tell a graduate to go and work on the street, many graduates who have no other option will do. But then not all graduates are able to leave that leave their expectations aside and struggle on the street, because on the street there are a lot of challenges on the street. One has to be a much more resilient minded person to survive on the street. But the street is also making crorpatis. I wouldn't believe this, but I saw this article on Economic Times that in Ghatkopar, income tax did a raid on a dosawala and he had 1 crore cash in the street. Anything is possible in India. So I'm not belittling any street vendor. Anything is possible. Unorganized market, that is why it is so large. We don't even know how large. And that is an example of TAM and serviceable addressable market. Now you have to see how much money you're raising depends on what you're trying to piggyback on. If you think you will start from zero and then be the hero, then you will get zero funding, because it is practically not. In 2020, everybody has expertise in something. You want to match that person's expertise from zero without using other people's expertise, it is super unlikely. So that is why you need to understand the technology maturity, the S curve of your business. So in 1970s, Intel just founded, and that time there were no robots, and all the fabrication work was happening manually. Scientists were doing it, and after the chips were made, also all the PCB soldering was manually. Computer skill assembly was a very sought after job. So the slow and flat growth. Then what happened in 1990s? So between 1990s and 2007s, lot of PCs were available. So because of PCs were available, robotics took a huge growth, and because of that, it becomes a self-feeding prophecy, self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a virtuous cycle of growth. More computers, they can make more robots, which can make more computers. Something like this started happening. So households in America started getting more and more access to computers. So it was the ripe time for Jeff Bezos to start Amazon, because everybody could order online, everybody could see the catalog on the computer by themselves, choose what they want by themselves, order what they want, and then get it delivered. And in exchange for doing all this self service, Jeff Bezos thought, I will give you a discount. Now just the right confluences, so Amazon took off. And by 2007, what happened is e-commerce space started to become super saturated. Like there were just one or two players, Amazon, Walmart, that's about it. Everybody else was acquired by these two players. So this is something that happens. If you think you can go to Amazon, to America, and start a company and then raise funding to compete against Amazon today, highly unlikely. That is why American funds are coming to India for Flipkart, Snapchat, Snapdeal, and all that. So, what is the other extreme of this? The other extreme is in 2014, Toyota invented the world's first hydrogen fuel car. Hydrogen fuel is a much ecologically friendlier alternative to both diesel also and lithium also. Actually, people just see the short term emissions and think that lithium is a more greener, ecologically friendly solution to hydrocarbons and petrol and diesel. What they don't see is that lithium is a mineral. This mineral supply is finite in the planet. Rocks do not grow lithium like hair or nails. It is not a bio or organic component, it is a mineral component. What will you do when all the lithium is used? You have to again go back to petrol, diesel. So then the same argument can be used for petrol diesel also. Now it is also a finite thing. Actually, no, it is a organic thing, meaning it is a carbon based source of fuel. And in a last startup Bangalore conference which I attended, I was fortunate enough to see a pitch by a company which is doing hydrothermal liquefaction. By doing that, what they are doing is they are collecting algae and all the sea grass, and they are compressing it in a way that it ferments and it creates a ethanol like substance which can be mixed with petrol. So you can replenish hydrocarbon based fuels, but you cannot replenish lithium. This is something nobody wants to talk about, because the immediate concern is global warming. Immediate concern is not to bother about something that will happen after 2 3 decades or 5 decades of lithium mining and consumption and finishing. So that is the reason why everybody is saying that battery and electric. But the best alternative is hydrogen fuel, because here what is happening is H2O. H2 is separated from O, and both are used for combustion, which is amazing. Why everybody cannot do? Because it is requiring some very advanced material science process. So if lithium is already a limitation, then the filter which will cause the separation of H2 and O. See, H2 and O is very easy to separate, right? You can just do electrolysis and separate. But if you want the car to run, then the car is not going to have the energy to do electrolysis and then split H2 and O and then burn H2 and O. So it has to do a H2 and O separation, hydrogen and oxygen separation, in a much economical, small footprint space. And when you minimize it, then the economy is not possible in 2014. And even till today, that problem has not been fully solved. That is why we don't see any examples of hydrogen fuel cars so far. So this is an innovation too ahead of the curve. Nobody's buying. Similarly, in 1958, GM had made the first driverless car using computer rule-based systems and whatnot and all. But it never had the kind of sensitivity and the obstacle avoidance and the basic sensor setups needed to survive in today's kind of driving environment. So even in 1950 it was never really mass market launched. And this is the kind of thing that venture capitalists are ideally looking for. Everything is converging and the market is expanding, and that happened for India in 2007-8. Already, so many households are having more than 50 million households at that time, 10 to 15 million at least, were having internet connections, and they were having enough earnings to actually order things online. And even then, Flipkart had to do cash on delivery system such a way that people would, take a leap of faith and order it, and provide a return based system. Now, if you see, the difficulty of returning things is much higher compared to just 5 years back. You could return almost anything. You could open anything, try it, return it. Whether it is a mobile phone, electronic gadget, anything. Now, if you see, if you want to return a laptop, very difficult. If you want to return a phone, very difficult. They can only let you replace it if there is a real fault. Otherwise, they will send the same thing back to you. This is the way their return policies have changed, if you see very carefully. And that's what I mean, that as time goes by, as you start reaching maturity, now Flipkart doesn't have that much money to spend on returns properly, so they are not letting you return their goods. And even then, people are ordering so much from Flipkart and Amazon. So this is the thing, once your habit forming product changes the habit of the customers, then the return rate can be dropped off and still customers will keep buying. And this is exactly what a venture capitalist is looking for. Venture capitalist is not a donor. He is not a saint. He is not here to just keep burning money to attract customers for free forever and ever. He wants to see that if the people are habituated, can the business sustain itself without further inclusion of capital? Can the customers' money keep the business running and generate surplus for all the investors? That is the whole point. And that happens when you are at the right ascending part of your S curve. Yeah, this Shopify company has shown staggering growth. It is one of the only few competitors to Amazon, because in Amazon, what is happening now? If you open a store in Amazon, you start selling something. In 3 to 6 months, Amazon will also start selling the same thing. So then your biggest competitor becomes Amazon. In order to make that threat come down, this Shopify company lets you create your own online commerce or online store. So that is what is happening in Shopify is not directly competing with Amazon, but everybody who is disappointed from Amazon comes to Shopify and sets up the shop. So Shopify is taking some cut in the transaction processing, but it is not going to put its own products there. So you come, you sell your product on Shopify. This is how Shopify is growing. Amazon one share is over $3,000. Shopify in just 1 year, it has given multifold return, and its share is now over $1,000. It keeps fluctuating a lot. Sometimes it reaches even $1,500. Angel investors, I keep talking about them. So how are they gathered around? They are gathered around these. They are their deal execution depends on the modern and traditional route. So earlier, these angel investor networks like Mumbai Angels and different angel investor networks, they were actually private family offices of wealthy businessmen. Like I mentioned earlier, Birlas, Agarwals, Ambanis, they all have their own investment professionals to find opportunities. So there, that is a traditional route. They and their few friends would come on board as investors, and that time the SEBI was not really governing their investment so much. So it was all depending on you and them, and how much money you need from them, and how much of the terms you are willing to agree for, you will get funding. Now what is happening is foreign investors are coming in, so there is a further need to regulate. So that is why there is this category 1, category 2 that I mentioned earlier, the AIF, category 3 AIF. All these AIF structures have been created by SEBI so that the foreign money can be properly tracked. Now, up to 200 investors can leverage a single investment vehicle, and maximum amount varies from 25 lakhs to 10 crore per investor. Even though it says 25 lakhs, no AIF entertains below 1 crore in practice. And sometimes there is 1 year lock-in minimum, and then the companies within 5 years of incorporation, you can get your investment out. But actually these norms keep changing, so I mentioned 3 year investment lock-in for getting LTCG benefits. You have to see what happens when. Next is these are some of the Indian angel network, Wadhwani Foundation, the Indus Entrepreneurs. The Indus Entrepreneurs was founded by several successful Indians in Silicon Valley and other cities of America. They came to India. They started opening chapters of their own, where they would come and teach Indian founders what are the mistakes that should be avoided, and so on and so forth. And that is also some of the things that happen in these other foundations and networks also. Chennai Angels, and they're all angel investment networks. Then there is investment platforms like OneCrowd, AngelList, Let's Venture. So these places, potential investees come on board. They advertise how their business is doing. So investing is a long and drawn out dating, kind of like that. It doesn't happen in the first time you went and you
Hello?
got funding or raised
हेलो
some funds.
हाँ
You will not hear from
हाँ
an
नमस्कार
investing
सर एंजल ब्रोकिंग मधून
body
बोलते
or
हैं.
an angel investor
हाँ, बोलिए
body
मैडम.
for months
ट्रेडिंग
together.
रिगार्डिंग कॉल
That
केला होता
doesn't
शेअर
mean it
मार्केट
is
मध्ये ट्रेडिंग मध्ये
necessary
इन्व्हेस्टमेंट करता का सर
that
तुम्ही.
you
नाही
have
नाही
to keep
मॅडम,
a
ती
friend list
इंटरेस्टेड
or
नाही.
broadcast
नाही
list or
सर
even a subscriber list or something, and you need to keep showing your progress to them month on month. Suddenly they will come and say, okay, we are ready to invest. That is how this happens. So angel investment funds are completely private. They are quick investments, diversified risk, and no number of deal limitations. And the indirect impact is there is the number of investors taking the leap into angel investing is increasing, and future fund managers and so on will emerge from this. There's an alternative to grants, there's an alternative to venture capital and to debt funding. An alternative is early access crowdfunding. Before I get into it, please excuse me for a second. Yeah. So this trend started from America, where the founder would create a web page, and this is even encouraged now also, that you create a web page and you take early orders, and in exchange for early orders you give the customer more value. You give them more discount, give them more freebies, give them more badges and recommendations and commendaments, and you glorify the founder in your website as a some special list of acknowledgements, like in the movie credits they give. So similarly, give credits to your early buyers, so that whenever somebody comes to the website of the company, they will see that these people bought early on. And so that is how Patreon and all these other crowdfunding businesses came about. Business wants to raise capital, so instead of raising from all these people who are either putting a debt obligation or putting kind of a equity dilution, or depending on donation or grant from the government or a research body, why don't I just take it from the customer? I show what is my promise to the customer, I show how long it takes to fulfill, and I show the customer only why I am the best person to fulfill it. That is the essence of these crowdfunding platforms. A business uses the capital it raised to grow. Then it gives back the investment over time. Giving back investment need not happen. You might just give the product. These are some of the Indiegogo, Seed Invest, Mighty Cause, Starter Engine, GoFundMe, Patreon. So in YouTube now, you will often hear the name of this website, patreon.com. What happens is that people who want access to that content can keep giving a certain monthly donation, and some extra content is given to those people who donate. That is the premise of Patreon. Similarly, in India, which crowdfunding platforms I have seen so far is, these are all non-profit crowdfunding platforms, where people who have had difficulty, who need to raise medical money, are going and asking for it. And I'm not sure whether they can ever repay you that money. So it is crowdfunding, but it's the same, right? If you go and fund a YouTuber, don't expect the YouTuber to return you the money. He's giving you content. And here, these people, they are giving you blessings, I guess, gratitude. It is like that. Crowdfunding can be for multiple causes. An alternative to Milap is Ketto.org. These .orgs are generally related to non-profits. So overview of the venture raising process. You have to know what is the specialty of your investor. Then you sort down the investors you think who understand your business. Then you go and approach them. Now you have to stand out in front of the investor as the likely winner in that competitive space. If there is no competition, then also you will not get investment. Then it means you are doing something that nobody wants, more or less. If you have identified a target market, service addressable market, then there will be somebody else also who has identified that and who is targeting that customer. Then it means that at least the customer group is validated. That is also important for venture capitalists. If you are doing something that nobody has heard of, nobody has known of, therefore nobody is competing, then no investor will also come. That is a tricky thing. Then there is non-disclosure agreement signing between investor and startup. So see, I told you, once upon a time, venture capitalist gave a term sheet. In smart founder took that term sheet to next capitalist and got a higher term sheet. To stop that practice of jacking up valuations, all these venture capitalists said, "Oh, you have to sign a NDA. You cannot show my term sheet to the whole world. Maintain integrity across records, and you have to show clear due diligence." So if you say this is my account book, then that account book should show everything. If you say that is my account book for purpose A, this is my account book for raising fund, this is my account book for showing to my wife, then it doesn't work, because due diligence will put it as a red flag. Which account book is showing which fact is true or not? How should the investor judge it magically? That will happen. So term sheet is the uh, it's the first draft of your shareholder agreement, but it's not a registered agreement. It's not as binding. But you have to come to terms on a term sheet. That is why the name term sheet. Your terms, investor terms. Are they in harmony? This is the first litmus test. Whether this investor will actually stick with you through thick and thin till the next fund round. Without term sheet, you go directly to shareholder agreement. Suddenly you realize, oh my god, I have so many clauses that I don't understand and I signed it for raising money. And then you don't have any way of backing out of that clause other than the dispute resolution systems in the shareholder agreement. So before making shareholder agreement only, You have to make a term sheet. You have to deliberate with your own lawyer, not investor's lawyer, your own lawyer, whether the terms are something that you can live with for the next 5 to 10 years. Then you come to the shareholder agreement. It is a registered agreement. You cannot save money by not doing registration to the government. The venture capitalist will never give you any funding. So you have to pay government taxes on the entire corpus you are raising. And then the startup gets funded. So it's a long and drawn out process. Initially, the investor only will not get back to you for whatever long number of months the investor feels that they need to keep listening from you. They need to keep seeing your investor relations attitude. They need to see whether your business is actually doing what you say it can do. Then they will take interest in you. After that, you have to go through all the other things that are shown you. So connect with the network, then you have to pitch the deck, then you have to show your business model. And all the time you have to keep in mind that these are people who have lots of capital. If you show too much of your business without raising the capital, what can happen? If you have revealed everything about your business, then the angel investor can also come and do your business. The angel investor can find a business kind of capitalist can find a company which will give better terms than you and start create a competitor for you. If you don't want to do that, then you have to always keep in mind that whatever you say, it has to be true, but it cannot be sufficient enough to replicate your business. Never reveal the entirety of the business, but at the same time, you have to show all the things necessary to attract the venture capitalist. It's a delicate balance. Then you have to clear the due diligence, and then you have to do, agree upon a valuation. After the valuation happens, you have to put that in the value structure. You have to, put the terms and conditions in place. Then you go to the when you are agreed to the term sheet, then only the shareholder agreement comes into the play. Then there'll be legal compliance issues. Okay, you'll have to get audits etc done after getting money also, and so on and so forth. Closing deal and share certificate issuance. Report regularly, because this investor relations cannot be emphasized enough. Okay, you don't report. You keep thinking that you are busy working on the business, you are busy making everybody rich, and you don't have time to report. Then suddenly, if some unexpected situation like some pandemic happens, then your investors might say, "You didn't tell me you are not ready to face a sudden pandemic. So now I will not further fund you." Then the so many businesses had to suffer a lot of problems. For example, Urban Clap, very good business, amazing expansion, raised 1200 crores. Then came the virus. What happened in the virus? Nobody wanted any clap from anybody from Urban Clap. No massage, no AC repair, nobody wanted anything because of lockdown. So what happened is all the investors became jittery, and the founder team was also having a hard time because they had to pay salaries, because that was the business model. They needed trained professionals, and you cannot retain trained professionals if you don't give them anything. So what happened is they had to take a down round. This also can happen. Reportedly, Urban Clap has now become Urban Companies. Somewhere I had read that the beneficiary of this deal was the Ambanis, and it may not be structured under Reliance Industries or not. I'm not sure yet, but it has some significant Ambani involvement. And from the 1200 crore business, they had to get a down round all the way to 100 crores or 120 cr or something. So anybody who invested 10 lakhs could only recover 1 lakh rupees. This is also one of the things that happens if your entire market only suddenly shifts in a hostile manner suddenly. Instead of expanding very ambitiously, if the Urban Club people could have managed to, sustain their growth trajectory, or find investors who didn't push them to grow so hard, somehow they could put away some money for, I don't know, nobody plans for pandemic, so I don't know what could have been done better. We can say anything, but it was a very difficult time for many businesses. So what is sweat equity? Sweat equity, I earlier also mentioned, you may be at a position where all your money is tied up to your business prototype, or to your website, or to your e-commerce site, or to your, other things you need, like your outreach or something. And therefore, you may not have enough money to give salaries. Then you have to give sweat equity. Then what is sweat equity? Sweat equity is the shares given to a person who is working on behalf of you or your company. Where, it has to be somebody who's working for the company, not even the founder. It has to be related to the company full-time basis. It has to be audited. The work has to be approved by the board. That yes, this work is so important that this talent should not be allowed to go away from us. So we need to retain him. Let us give him sweat equity. Sweat equity, different registrations are there. SEBI registration 2002 is for listed companies, and for unlisted companies, there is ICDR regulation 2018. So a company whose shares are listed on a recognized exchange under Section 54 Companies Act, and so on and so forth. Companies Act can further give unlisted company under Companies Act can also have various sections applicable, Section 42, Section 62, 1B, and then shares and debentures rules 2014, Rule 12. These are all the things that an unlisted company has to take note of. Either give this job to a competent personnel like a company secretary, or then otherwise find it yourself and then incorporate these things in your minutes and in your business. So impact of 2020 on valuations. This was a survey done by a famous angel investor, Sri Sanjay Mehta, and his business and his angel investment firm, which is EIF. It is called 100x.vc, name of the website, and this is all available on public domain from their survey of investors and founders. So a lot of people agreed that a lot of investors agreed that for higher valuation we will not give money. We have to 75% of the survey takers, investors, said only on lower valuations they will agree. What is the other thing they saw since last year? That most of the investors wanted to go for anything digital, anything that can generate revenue sitting at home. Any business or any business that enables somebody else to make money sitting at home is the kind of business they want to do, like uh, online setting up of your services, whether you want to set an online consultancy or online training or online tuitions or something. Sir, if I may confirm from you, what is the time horizon for us?
So we are already have completed the time horizon. It's 11 to 1 what we decided.
Fine.
Okay,
Okay.
so if I can wind up, I have no, means, we can not have any objection on that.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
So I'll just wind it up quickly. So I'll just go through the slides quickly. The time to raise fund has increased. Investors' directives to founders have centered around cutting cost and make sure that the increase the runway means that the business remains in action, although with reduced employees and reduced salaries. Common pitfalls when investing. I will just let you read through this in the interest of time. This is an important slide to remember that you can definitely forget any chances of funding if there is a disconnect between what you are making and what customers want. To show that what you are making and what customers want is the same thing, venture capitalist will expect an increase in revenues, and they will expect testimonials from your customers. If these two things are there, and then even if your prototype has problems or flaws or limitations, even then a venture capitalist might take you seriously. But if you make something that is just not being used, that is idle, then raising money is much harder.
Uh,
So due diligence comes in various aspects. You need to have so many areas where you will be grilled, where you will be investigated, and your business has to have all the necessary documentation. Term sheet, these are all the aspects of a term sheet. CCPS is compulsorily convertible preference share. Different clauses exist. Exclusivity clause is a restriction on the company to make sure that between the duration of term sheet and shareholder agreement is signed, you cannot approach any other investment firm. It is an alternative agreement in addition to confidentiality. Tag along right happens when a minority shareholder wants to ensure that if the majority is doing something that is benefiting the majority, minority also wants to take a cut of it so that the minority is not left aside. So if the majority decides to sell the share, each share at a 20% premium, then the minority also gets the same benefits. Drag along right happens when the majority shareholder decides to come in and say that okay, we want to take the company away from take the company and do some other operation such as increasing the entire stake in the company, turn it 100% solely owned subsidiary. Then the minority shareholders are dragged into selling their shares. This is drag along rights. Simple agreement for future equity is founded by is a public domain document that is put out by Sri Sanjay Mehta and Company at 100x.vc. Please go through it. It is having much more detail about all the clauses and definitions that are there. Thank you for your kind attention.
Uh, Thank you very much, sir. Our participant asked for your presentation slides.
Yes, I
Okay.
will. I'll email it to you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Uh,
Okay, sir.
okay. So uh, here I am asking now so the journey of this complete workshop it was started with Paramjit Singh Biola on 13th of February and on 19th of February. Two sessions were conducted by him. Then the one session conducted by Amit Kumar Patel on the IPR and patents. And today's session, actually, sir, Akashdeep Hawaldar sir have given really what you can say in-depth insights on this funding. And but our time frame was only of 2 hours, and the information that he have given wasn't fit within that 2 hours because it's very large. So what means we look forward for this in the future if permits. We'll have the complete session on this funding only from you. That what I tried my best to do. Okay, so asking our director, sir, Dr. Mari, to speak around this, and also I am means requesting Dr. Hawaldar, Montosh Hawaldar, to speak few words about this session because this is the concluding session of this workshop. Okay, so sir.
And I'd like to thank Professor Rumali sir also for taking the pains to coordinate this workshop and to the organizing body for planning and conceiving such a thing. And I wish all the best to all the participants so that they can take full advantage of the networking and the support that is available here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so just a call. So my sir, Hawaldar sir, Mantosh Hawaldar sir. Can you,
GHRCEM Waguli.
yeah. Mantosh Hawaldar sir. Sir, can you speak a few words? I'm asking Dr. Mai sir, our director, to speak a few words regarding the workshop. सर
रुमाले सर माझी एक महत्वाची मीटिंग चालू आहे.
ओके ठीक आहे मी
कन्क्लूड इट. ओके
ओके ओके
सर.
Hello.
Sir, director sir is having a very urgent meeting with the central body, so he said that to conclude without his speech. So
Okay, sir.
okay, sir. So I'm really thankful to the complete team of InnoDays by this given by Kalamji Singh Biola of you and
Okay.
Amish Kumar, and and I'm also looking forward to meet in the future so that we can arrange a complete workshop only on the funding because I think that is the very core part of starting any business. Sometimes we won't have the sufficient funds or whatever funds we get may not be the sufficient to start or you can say to sustain the business, and we require to go for that. Then IPR is again whatever the Patel sir has told. I don't think that was sufficient to start with the patent. So I'm going to concentrately on all IPR, like how to register your firm, how to register for the trademark and everything, and likewise. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, one thing is that time is already 2 hours is quite a what we can say lengthy time to go through for the speech because see, but still, if some participants are having questions, you can put it here, or you can ask the sir on his email ID, which was given on this slide itself. Okay. So if you are not having questions, with your permissions, I can conclude this. And if you are having your questions, I'm giving you 5 minutes for raising your question and answer. So as usual, sir, I know that students are not that
Yeah.
enthusiastic in asking the question, but still they want your presentation so that they can go through that and then they.
Okay.
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 So with this, I say that this session is concluded. I am really thankful to all of you, including the resource persons and the participants, and really proud that your session, by your session, we got around 580 registered participants. Okay, sir. So thank you.
Okay.
I am ending the session
Thank
now.
you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.